Hey there, Adam here. So I thought a fun first video for my channel, at least after the introduction video, would be a very short sort of overview on my current rental property portfolio. I expect that a major topic that I'll be talking about in this channel, probably quite a good bit, is personal finance, investing, and because it's both a hobby, an interest, and I think sort of necessary in today's environment to have a basic understanding of personal finance and investing to have any expectation as to being able to retire once you get to an age where retirement makes sense. So I wanted to just briefly get into my portfolio, how long I've had them, just a little bit of background, just to get you sort of started as to where I'm coming from. And you'll see that a sort of a theme throughout my videos is I'm going to be talking about things I've done, things that I understand. I'm not going to be talking about, how to run a private equity firm or something because I've never done that. I'm going to talk about things I've done, things that I've learned, and sort of some of my experiences and takeaways from it. So, I'm trying to give you an honest perspective from someone who I do have a pretty decent income. I went to law school, so I got out at 27, and I guess in 2016, and then my first property that I purchased was in I want to say January 2017. So just to give you sort of no, I guess it would have been 2018. So my first property would have been 2018 because it was about a year after I sort of got into the workforce and got some money. So just to sort of take you through my real estate, I originally worked and lived in Asheville, North Carolina, which is up in the mountains, and I grew up in that area, so that sort of went back towards home, and eventually joined my dad's law firm. So it's the two of us, two lawyer law firm, and four full time staff, just to sort of give you an expectation as to where I'm coming from income. My first property I purchased was my personal residence, and I bought that in the beginning of 2018, and that was around $103,000. It was 750-ish square feet in Waynesville, North Carolina. So at that point, and it was 5 minutes from my office. So I bought that for the location. I bought that for obviously the price was a big one as well. You're not going to find, it's going to be very difficult to find a price point any lower than that for something in a decent area. So it was location, which was both close to office and in a safe location. It was, it's one of the smaller houses on the block, but the block itself was working class and clean. So, one of the big things for me was safe neighborhood, clean neighborhood. Even if it wasn't upscale, there was half the yards would probably need to be mowed a little more often than they were, but mine probably fit that definition some of the time as well. So that's sort of how that goes. So that was my first house. And then I decided to get into real estate. So I practiced law with my father, and then my mother and I decided to get into real estate together. And I understand that this is going to not be applicable to every single person because I absolutely had an unfair advantage. Be the first to admit it. I had a lot of advantages as a result of who my family was. And it's unfair to sort of state it any other way. I know some people will put out that meme of, the Bloomberg article or sort of the finance website articles where there's these people that go in there and say, you can make, here's how to pay off your student loans in 3 years. All you need to do is get your family member to buy your house for you, or live in your grandma's garage, buy a house for you, and then you can go live with your grandma and rent your house out. And look at that. Just like that, you can pay off your student loans in 3 years. So I am trying to give realistic perspective. I didn't have my parents didn't buy my house for me. So just to put that one behind you, all my debt has been my own. I had a lot of student loan debt from law school as well. So while I had some definite advantages in the family department, I still think that, it's somewhere in between. It's not the most unfair. I don't, that's sort of a hard way to put that. I had a lot of advantages, but at the same time, I think that a lot of this was due to good planning. So, take it for what you will. So I bought my first house 2018, 750 square feet. I paid zero down because I banked with the local bank that wanted to establish a relationship with me, basically. That they knew that I was local to the area. They knew that I was an attorney and that I'd probably be a pretty good client for them. So I was sort of, I think, in one of their sort of special first time homeowner programs. So I got zero money down. It was just closing costs. So I paid a couple $1,000s at closing for a house for $103,000. So that was the first property. Second property that we invested in with my mother was it's basically a triplex, but it's not technically a triplex. It's actually 3 small houses that are all on the same property, but they don't actually connect. So it's a triplex, but at the same time, not a triplex. So it had a shared driveway, and it has a fence around the whole thing with a gate that closes, which a lot of our tenants, I found out this is actually a huge draw. People absolutely, all of our tenants that live there love the fence. It's basically a privacy fence. It's total solid wood. We bought that property in cash. So what for $205,000. So the reason that we were able to close on that for a pretty good price is, again, because it was all in cash. And what I ended up doing was I did a promissory note with my parents. So they basically loaned me 50% of the down payment, which I then turned around and paid back to them with a interest rate that was in line with the interest rates for every other property at the time. So we just sort of looked at sort of the ongoing rates that everyone else was paying, matched it to that, and then that's how we closed and paid for the first property, which again was a triplex for about $205,000. So these houses were, I want to say it's 600 square feet, 350 square feet, and then 450 square feet. So really the 2 smallest are closer to efficiencies than an apartment. So one of them is definitely an efficiency. It's a single room with a bathroom. And then one of them, the 450, it does have a dividing wall, has a closed off bedroom, and then the living room and the kitchen are in the same room. And then the third one is a converted Quonset hut, if you look those up. And it's a really cool little building. It's got concrete floors. It's neat. It's got a lot of character. I actually considered moving into that myself, but ended up deciding to just go with living in my other house. I thought that was just a very, very cool little property, and that's the biggest of the 3. So it's got concrete floors, and it doesn't have a closed off bedroom. So it's got a bathroom that's closed off, but no, the bedroom has sort of like a half wall. So they are, when I still have all these properties. So we're currently renting out the largest of them for, I believe it's about $1,050 a month. The middle one is $725 a month, and actually we've had the same tenant in there since we bought the property. Rent's never been raised. And then the smallest one is $650 a month. So that's the first property. Second property is, I guess that's technically the second property I've talked about. It's the first rental property. Second rental property, so third property that I was involved in purchasing, was a 1950s house that's about 1,000 square feet. It was right down the road, same neighborhood as the house I was living in. We found out about it the day it went on the market, made a offer for market price. It was $140,000 for the price it was listed at. It was $140,000, and we closed on that pretty quickly. So that was right when the market, and that was in 2019, or it was either 2019 or no, it was 2020. So no, it was 2019 because we closed on it right before COVID started kicking in. We had some time to get that sort of set up. So we bought that in 2019, 140, and then we were renting that one out for $1,200 a month or $1,250 a month. So that's, if it does not meet what you call the 1% rule, but most rental properties these days don't. I had a very similar deal again with my parents. They had some money that was sitting around that they wanted to invest, so paid cash, and then I took out a promissory note for 50% of the purchase price, and then so I'm paying a promissory note again for market rate back to them, as though it's a mortgage. So I actually, if you're sort of doing the math here with me as we sit, I actually had a negative cash flow from these properties upon purchase. If you factor out maintenance and other expenses, my cash flow at this point in time, I was paying, I want to say about $1,400 a month in a rental payment or in a promissory note payments, and my distributions were less than that per year. Well, not less than 1,400, but it was less than my total yearly payments, which is fine because I'm making good money as a lawyer. So that's sort of how this factors in, is at the time of purchase, because it's essentially the equivalent of a 100% down payment mortgage, because I'm getting 50% of the distribution, and my loan's for 50%. So basically, it's 100% leverage, infinite leverage, which I can get into more later in a different video. It's sort of neither here nor there, and perhaps I'm straying a little too off into the weeds at this point. So then what ended up happening was I decided during COVID that I wanted to move to Charlotte. I'm still working with my dad, but decided I wanted to move to Charlotte. COVID changed the way the court system worked, in that everyone finally got with the program, and most of my stuff is now heard remotely over WebEx or Zoom. And that allowed me to be able to move back to Charlotte, which is where I went to law school. So I bought my house, my current house that I'm sitting in today. I bought it in 2021. I bought it, I want to say September, October in 2021 for $320,000, 20% down payment. And then simultaneously, I sold my first house, the one I bought for $103,000, sold that back to our rental property LLC for a small profit. Because I got an appraisal when we did I did a refinance at one point, and it appraised for $136,000. So I refinanced it, and then, which, by the way, that refinance was sort of silly because I ended up selling it back to the LLC and paying off the mortgage in under a year anyway. But that's okay. Sometimes that happens. So I refinanced it. It appraised at $136,000. So I sold it back to the LLC for $136,000, and we basically adjusted ownership percentages to match the price that it was worth upon selling it back to the company. I don't need to, the details are a little bit complicated. It took us a while to figure out, but I ended up reducing my share of the LLC down from 50% down to 38%, and then getting the money for the sale of the property back to the LLC. So I'm now renting that property out for $1,000 or $1,100 a month. So that's the sort of our current rental portfolio. We got a bit lucky. I'd be happy to admit it. We bought in 2018, 2019, 2020, and then I bought my house, which is only 1,400 square feet. So I may have overpaid a little bit at $320,000, but my interest rate is 2.8 or 2.75, and now you're paying 7% or 7.2%. So I was looking at if I'd purchased this house for the same price now as opposed to a year ago, I would be paying $2,000 a month on a mortgage instead of $1,200. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. The interest rates are basically making it extremely non-economical to purchase rental properties or any kind of property right now. So that's just sort of an overview, and some of my long-term plans are to get out of single family and only do multifamily, because I do have some reservations about renting single families. It's not really, I mean, maybe moral to some degree. I think that there's just such a housing shortage. It's just a mess. I mean, it's just an absolute mess. Multifamily is always going to be, in my opinion, better with a single owner. Condo owners associations are the worst. So I don't like condos. I think that those types of associations are awful. I've litigated some condo owner type disputes. You don't want to do it. I think that buildings with shared roofs, shared hallways are almost always going to be better with a single owner rented out. I think that from a moral perspective, it is fine. I think that a lot of people only want to live somewhere for a year or two, and it makes no sense to purchase a house if you're only going to live there for a couple years. So I do think at some point I will sell the single families once it makes sense to do so. I'll sell those and then move that into multifamily, which I think I can provide better value for the tenants And also, I think that single family is better for long-term people that are going to want to live in the area for a while. And I just feel better as a person not owning single-family rentals, even though we're at around or slightly under market rent, and we do take pride in maintaining and keeping them up. So I'm not one of those Marxist, anti-tenant, anti-landlord type people. Obviously, since I have rentals, but I do probably come down somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, perhaps a little bit to the left of center. And I do think that single family rentals don't make a lot of sense most of the time, and that there's probably a better way to do it. But that's sort of where I'm at. That's the overview of my rentals. I know this video has gone pretty long. It's a bit talking head. I really am just trying to get out some content, put some stuff on the channel, just let it populate a bit. If you have any questions about the rentals, if you have questions about specific deals, we can get more into numbers, we can get into maintenance, we can get into profits, losses. I'm trying to be sort of an open book here. I want to answer questions and give people realistic expectations. It's definitely been work. And if we're talking about money directly in my pocket, no. I think that with just in like the last year or so, the distributions have outweighed my payments, my promissory note payments. So for the first 4 years or so, 3.5 years, I was losing money out of my pocket, but it was an investment. It was going towards principal and ownership in these properties, and it's obviously I've done well because they've appreciated. But yeah, I mean it's definitely it's not as easy as some of the YouTubers would make it out to be. All right, well, that's sort of the end of this first video. I just wanted to put out something on a topic that most people find pretty interesting. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to collaborate with me on something, you can reach me. I'll put my email in my About section on my channel. Thank you very much.